No matter what hour your clock strikes here, it's always Halloween. And I'm always your haunted host, Lucé Tomlin-Brenner. Welcome again to the Pod Closet. We are reading The Halloween Tree by Ray Bradbury. This is part 2, so we've already read the first 2 chapters. If you're tuning in for the first time, go back, because today we are picking up with Chapter 3. Look at that mask. It's very fun, a little spooky. And away we go. Oh, let's do a little catch up. Last time, what happened was everybody was worried about Pipkin. Pipkin, the boy who's never been, ever toppled. He's the greatest boy. He's the greatest. I just can't even think of a word for how much these boys love Pipkin. He is a magnificent party boy who's changed all of their lives, and it's not Halloween without him. And where is he? That's where we left off. Magnificent boy who can't be toppled. You know that thing boys say about other boys? All right, here we go. Chapter 3. The front door opened. Pipkin stepped out. Not flew, not banged, not exploded. Stepped out. And he came down the walk to meet his friends. But moving like an old man almost. Pipkin! They shouted. They wanted to scare away their uneasiness. "Hi, gang," said Pipkin. His face was pale. He tried to smile, but his eyes looked funny. He was holding his right side with one hand, as if he had a boil there. They all looked at his hand. He took it away from his side. "Well," he said with faint enthusiasm, "we ready to go?" "Yeah, but you don't look ready," said Tom. "Are you sick?" "On Halloween? Are you kidding me?" "But where's your costume?" "Go up ahead. I'll catch up." "No, Pipkin, we'll wait for you to—" "Just go on," said Pipkin. His face deathly pale now. His hand was back on his side. "You got a stomach ache?" asked Tom. "Have you told your folks?" No, I can't. Tears suddenly burst from Pipkin's eyes. "It's nothing. Look, I tell you, look, just go straight towards the ravine. Head for the house, okay? The place of the haunts, yeah? I'll meet you there." "You swear?" "I swear." "Wait till you see my costume." "Wait till you'll see my costume." The boys began to back off. On the way, they touched his elbow or knocked him gently in the chest or ran their knuckles along his chin in a fake fight. "Okay, Pipkin, as long as you're sure." "I'm sure." He took his hand away from his side. His face colored for a moment as if the pain were gone. "On your marks, get set, go!" When Joe Pipkin said go, they went. They ran. They ran backward, halfway down the block, so they could see Pipkin standing there waving at them. "Hurry up, Pipkin! I'll catch you!" he shouted a long way off. The night swallowed him. They ran. When they looked back again, he was gone. They banged doors. They shouted, "Trick or treat!" and their brown paper bags began to fill with incredible sweets. They galloped with their teeth glued shut with pink gum. They ran with red wax lips bedazzling their faces. But all the people who met them at their doors looked like candy factory duplicates of their own mothers and fathers. Too much kindness flashed from every window, every portal. What they wanted was to hear dragons belch in basements and banging castle doors. That's relatable. And so, still looking back for Pipkin, they reached the edge of town and the place where civilization fell away into darkness. The ravine, filled with varieties of night sounds, lurkings of black ink, steam, and creak, lingerings of autumns that rolled over in fire and bronze and died 1,000 years ago. From this deep place sprang mushrooms and toadstools and cold stone frogs and crawdads and spiders. There was a long tunnel down there under the earth in which poisoned waters dripped, and the echoes never ceased calling, "Come, come, come. And if you do, you'll stay forever, forever. Drip, 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 forever. Rustle, run, rush, whisper, and never go, go, go. The boys lined up on the rim of the darkness, looking down. And then Tom Skeleton, cold in his bones, whistled his breath through his teeth like wind blowing over the bedroom screen at night. He pointed. Oh, hey, that's where Pipkin told us to go. He vanished. All looked on. They saw his small shape race down the dirt path into 100 million tons of night, all crammed in that huge, dark pit, that dank cellar, that deliciously frightening ravine. Yelling, they plunged after him. Where they had been was empty. The town was left behind to suffer itself with sweetness. Chapter 4. Oh, here's a goofy-looking guy welcoming us to Chapter 4. Let's get some water, or take a water break. Wonderful. All right, Chapter 4. They ran down through the ravine at a swift rush, all laughing, jostling, all elbows and ankles and steamy snorts and roustabouts. They stopped in collision where Tom Skeleton stopped, and they pointed up the path. There, he whispered, there's the only house in town worth visiting on Halloween. There. Yeah, said everyone, for it was true. The house was special and fine and tall and dark. There must have been 1,000 windows in its sides, all shimmering with cold stars. It looked as if it had been cut out of a black marble instead of built on timbers. And the inside? Who could guess how many rooms, halls, breezeways, attics, superior and inferior attics, some higher than others, some more filled with dust and webs and ancient leaves or gold buried above ground in the sky, but lost away so high no ladder in town could take you there. The house beckoned with its towers, invited with its gummed shut doors. Pirate ships are a tonic. Ancient forts are a boon. But a house? A haunted house? On All Hallows Eve? 8 small hearts beat up an absolute storm of glory and approbation. Come on! But they were already crowding up the path until they stood at last by a crumbling wall, looking up and up and up, still farther up at the great tomb-yard top of the house, for that's what it seemed. The high mountain peak of the mansion was littered with what looked like black bones or iron rods, and enough chimneys to choke out smoke signals from 36 fires on sooty hearths hidden far below in the dim bowels of this monstrous place. With so many chimneys, the roof seemed a vast cemetery, each chimney signifying the burial place of some old god of fire or an enchantress of steam, smoke, or firefly spark. Even as they watched, a kind of bleak exhalation of soot breathed up out of some 46 flues, darkening the sky still more and putting out a few of the stars. Boy, said Tom Skellington, Pipkin sure knows what he's talking about. Oh boy, they all agreed. They crept along a weed-infested path toward the crumpled front porch. Tom Skellington alone itched his bony foot up the first porch step. The others gasped at his bravery. So now, finally, in a mob, a compact mass of sweating boys moved up the porch amid fierce cries of the planks underfoot and shudderings of their bodies. Each wished to pull back, to swivel about, to run, but he found himself trapped against the boy in front or behind or to the side. So with a pseudopod thrust out here or there, the amoebic form, the large perspiration of boys, leaned and made a run and a stop to the front door of the house, which was as tall as a coffin and twice as thin. They stood there for a long moment, various hands reaching out like the legs of an immense spider, as if to twist that cold knob or reach up for the knocker on the front door. Meanwhile, the wooden floorings of the porch sank and wallowed beneath their weight, threatening at every shift of proportion to give way and fling them into some cockroach abyss beneath. The planks, each turned to an A or an F or a C, sang out their uncanny music as heavy shoes scraped on them. And if there had been a time and it were noon, they might have danced out a cadaver's tune or a skeleton's rigadoon, or for who can resist an ancient porch which, like a gigantic xylophone, only wants to be jumped on to make music. Whew, this Mr. Bradbury has a way with words. But they were not thinking of this. Henry Hank Smith, for that's who it was, hidden inside his black witch's costume, cried out, "Look!" And they all looked at the knocker on the door. Tom's hand trembled out to touch it. And Marley knocker. "What? You know, Scrooge and Marley, A Christmas Carol," said Tom. And indeed, the face that made up the knocker on the door was the face of a man with a dread toothache, his jaw bandaged, his hair askew, his teeth prolapsed, his eyes wild. Dead as a doornail Marley, friend to Scrooge, inhabitor of lands beyond the grave, doomed to wander this earth forever until... "Knock," said Henry Hank. Tom Skeleton took a hold of Marley's cold and grisly jaw and lifted it and then let it fall. All jumped at the concussion. The entire house shook. Its bones ground together. Shades snap furled up so that the windows blinked wide with their ghastly eyes. Tom Skeleton cat-leapt to the porch rail, staring up. On the rooftop, weird weathercocks spun. Two-headed roosters whirled in the sneezed wind. A gargoyle on the western rim of the house erupted twin snorts of rain-funneled dust. And down the long, snaking, serpentine rain spouts of the house, after the sneeze had died and the weathercocks ceased spinning, vagrant wisps of autumn leaves and cobwebs fell gusting out onto the dark grass. Tom whirled to look at the faintly shuddering windows. Moonlit reflections trembled in the glass like schools of disturbed silver minnows. Then the front door gave a shake and a twist of its knob, a grimace of its Marley knocker, and it flung itself wide. The wind made by the suddenly opening door almost knocked the boys off the porch. They seized one another's elbows, yelling. Then the darkness within the house inhaled. A wind sucked through the gaping door. It pulled at the boys, dragging them across the porch. They had to lean back as to not be snatched into the deep, dark hall. They struggled, shouted, clutched the porch rails, but then the wind ceased. Darkness moved within darkness. Inside the house, a long way off, someone was walking towards the door. Whoever it was must have been dressed all in black, for they could see nothing but a pale white face drifting on the air. An evil smile came and hung in the doorway in front of them. Behind the smile, a tall man hid in shadow. They could see his eyes now, small pinpoints of green fire in little charred pits of sockets. Looking out at them. "Oh, well," said Tom. "Trick or treat?" "Trick?" said the smile in the dark. "Treat?" "Yes, sir." The wind played a flute in a chimney somewhere, an old song about time and dark and far-off places. The tall man shut up his smile like a bright pocket knife. "No treats," he said. "Only trick." And the door slammed. The house thundered with showers of dust. Dust puffed out of the rainspout again in fluffs like the emergence of downy cats. Dust gasped from the windows. Dust snorted from the porch boards under their feet. The boys stared at the locked, shut-fast front door. The Marley knocker was not scowling now, but smiling, an evil smile. "What does he mean?" asked Tom. "No treats? Only tricks?" Backing off around the side of the house, they were astonished at the sounds it made. A whole rigmarole of whispers, squeaks, creaks, wails, and murmurs. And the night wind was careful to let the boys hear them all. With every step they took, the great house leaned after them with soft groans. They rounded the far side of the house and they stopped. For there was the tree. And it was such a tree as they had never seen in all their lives. It stood in the middle of a vast yard behind this terribly strange house, and this tree rose up some 100 feet in the air, taller than the high roofs, and full and round and well-branched and covered all over with rich assortments of red, brown, and yellow autumn leaves. "But," whispered Tom, oh, look. What's up in that tree?" For the tree was hung with a variety of pumpkins of every shape and size, and a number of tints and hues of smoky yellow and bright orange. "It's a pumpkin tree," someone said. "No," said Tom. The wind blew among the high branches and tossed their bright burdens softly. "That's a Halloween tree," said Tom. And he was right. This incredible illustration. No colors, but still you can see the jack-o'-lanterns there in the tree, and that house is obviously to die for. Exactly the kind of house you would want to live in if you were a lantern. Let's see, should we read one more chapter? See how long chapter 5 is. It might be good. Well, it's definitely going to be good. But let us see. Ooh, it's a longie. Let's do it anyways. Chapter 5. Creepy, getting creepier. The pumpkins on the tree were not mere pumpkins. Each had a face sliced into it. Each face was different. Every eye was a stranger eye. Every nose was a weirder nose. Every mouth smiled hideously in some new way. There must have been 1,000 pumpkins hanging on this tree, hung high and on every branch. 1,000 smiles, 1,000 grimaces, and twice times 1,000 glares and winks and blinks and leering, fresh-cut eyes. As the boys watched, a new thing happened. The pumpkins began to come alive. One by one, starting at the bottom of the tree and the nearest pumpkins, candles took fire within their raw interiors. This one, and then that, and then this, and then still another, and onward and upward and all around. 3 pumpkins here, 7 pumpkins still higher, a dozen clustered beyond, 100, 500, 1,000 pumpkins lit with their candles, which is to say brightened up their faces, showed fire in their square or round or curiously slanted eyes. Flames guttered in their toothed mouths. Sparks leapt out of their ripe cut ears. And from somewhere 2 voices, 3 or maybe 4 voices whispered and chanted a kind of sing-song or an old sea shanty of the sky, and time and earth turned over into sleep. The rain spouts blew spider dust. "It's big, it's broad," a voice smoked from the rooftop chimney. "It's broad, it's bright, it fills the sky on All Hallows Night." From open windows somewhere cobwebs drifted. "The strangest sight you'll ever seen, the monster tree on Halloween." The candles flickered and flared. The wind crooned in, the wind crooned out. The pumpkin mouths tuned the song. The leaves have burned to gold and red. The grass is brown, the old year dead. But hang the harvest high. Oh, see the candle constellations on the Halloween tree. Tom felt his mouth stir like a small mouse wanting to sing. The stars they turn, the candles burn, and the mouse leaves scurry on the cold wind borne. And a mob of smiles shine down on thee from the gourds hung high on the Halloween tree. The smile of the witch, the smile of the cat, the smile of the beast, the smile of the bat, the smile of the reaper taking his fee, all cut and glimmer on the Halloween tree. Smoke seemed to sift from Tom's mouth. Halloween tree. All the boys whispered it. Halloween tree, Halloween tree, Halloween tree. And then there was silence. And during the silence, the last of the triples and quadruples of the All Hallows tree candles were lit in titanic constellations woven up through the black branches and peeking down through the twigs and crisp leaves. And the tree had now become one vast, substantial smile. The last of the pumpkins were now lit. The air around the trees was Indian summer breath, breathing warm. The tree exhaled sooty smoke and raw pumpkins smelled upon them. Gosh, said Tom Skeleton. I'm adding a little Nightmare Before Christmas in there. Gosh, said Tom Skeleton. Hey, what kind of place is this? Asked Henry Hank, the witch. I mean, first the house, that man, no treats, only tricks, and now I never saw a tree like this in my life. Like a Christmas tree, but only bigger, and all those candles and pumpkins. What does it mean? What's it celebrating? Celebrate? A vast voice whispered somewhere, perhaps in a chimney-sooted bellows, or perhaps all the windows of the house opened like mouths at the same moment behind them, sliding up, sliding down, announcing the word, celebrate, with breathings out of the darkness. Yes. The gigantic whisper which trembled the candles and the pumpkins. Celebration. The boys leapt around, but the house was still. The windows were closed and brimmed with pools of midnight. Last one in's an old maid, cried Tom suddenly, and a bond of leaves lay waiting like old fires, old gold. And the boys ran and dived at the huge, lovely pile of autumn treasure. And in the moment of diving, about to vanish beneath the leaves in crisp swarms, yelling, shouting, shoving, falling, there was an immense gulp of breath, a seizing in of air. The boys yelped, pulled back as if an invisible whip had struck them. For coming up out of the pile of leaves was a bony white hand all by itself. And following it, all smiles, hidden one moment, but now revealed as it slid upward, was a white skull. And what had been a delicious pool of oak and elm and poplar leaves to thrash and sink and hide in now became the last place on all this world the boys wanted to be. For the white, bony hand was flying on the air, and the white skull rose to hover before them. And the boys fell back, colliding, sneezing out of the air in panics until in one wild mess they fell flat upon the earth and writhed and tore at the grass to fight free, to scramble, trying to run. Help! They cried. Oh, yes, help, said the skull. Then peal after peal of laughter froze them further as the hand upon the air, the bony skeleton hand, reached up and took hold of the white skull face and peeled it down and off. The boys blinked once behind their masks. Their jaws dropped, though none could see them dropping. The huge man in dark clothes soared up out of the leaves, taller yet taller. He grew like a tree. He put out branches that were hands, he stood framed against the Halloween tree itself, his outstretched arms and long white bony fingers festooned with orange globes of fire and burning smiles. His eyes were pressed tight as he roared with laughter. His mouth gaped wide to let an autumn wind rush out. Ha 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 ha! Not treat, boys! Oh no, not treat! Ha ha! Trick, boys! Trick! Trick! Ha 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 ha! They laid there waiting for the earthquake to come, and it came. The tall man's laughter took hold of the ground and gave it a shake. This tremor passed through their bones, came out of their mouths, and it came out in the form of still more laughter. They sat up amid the ruins of the thrashed about leaf piles, surprised. They put their hands to their masks to feel the hot air leaping out of small gusts of echoing mirth. Then they looked up at the man as if to verify their surprise. Yes, boys, that was a trick. You've forgotten? No, you never knew. And he leaned against the tree, finishing out his fits of happiness, shaking the trunk, making the 1,000 pumpkins shiver and the fires inside smoke and dance. Warmed by their laughter, the boys got up to feel their bones and see if anything was broken. Nothing was. They stood in a small mob under the Halloween tree waiting, for they knew this was only the beginning of something new and special and grand and fine. Well, said Tom Skeleton. Well, Tom, said the man. Tom, cried everyone else, is that you? Tom, in the skeleton mask, stiffened. Or is it Bob or Fred? No, that must be Ralph, said the man. All of those, sighed Tom, clapping his mask hard in place, relieved. Yes, it's all of us, cried everyone. The man nodded, smiling. Now you know something about Halloween you never knew before. How did you like my trick? Trick, yes, trick. The boys were catching fire with the idea. It made all the good glue go out of their joints and put a little dust of sin in their blood. They felt it stir around until it pumped on up to the light. This sentence. They felt it stir around until it pumped on up to light their eyes and stretch their lips to show their happy dog teeth. Yeah, sure, tricks. Is this what you used to do on Halloween? Asked the witch boy. Oh, this and more, but let me introduce myself. Mound Shroud is the name. Carapace, clavicle, Mound Shroud. Does that have a ring, boys? Does it sound for you? Mound Shroud. It sounds, the boys thought, it sounds Mound Shroud. It's a fine name, said Mr. Mound Shroud, giving it a full sepulchral night church sound, and a fine night, and all the deep, dark, wild, long history of Halloween waiting to swallow us whole. Swallow us? Yes, cried Mound Shroud. Lads, look at yourselves. Why are you, boy, wearing the skull face, and you, boy, carrying a scythe, and you, lad, made up like a witch, and you, and you, and you? He thrust his bony finger at each mask. You don't know, do you? You just put on those faces and old mothball clothes and jump out, but you don't really know, do you? Well, said Tom, a mouse behind his skull white muslin. No. Yeah, said the devil boy. Come to think of it, why am I wearing this? He fingered his red cloak and his sharp rubber horns and his lovely pitchfork. And me, this, said the ghost, trailing its long white graveyard sheets, and all the boys were given to wonder and touch their own costumes and refit their own masks. Then it wouldn't be fun for you to find out? Asked Mr. Mound Shroud. I'll tell you. No, I'll show you. If only there was time. It's only 6:30. Halloween hasn't even begun, said Tom in his cold bones. True, said Mr. Mountroud. All right, lads, come along. He strode, they ran. At the edge of the deep, dark night ravine, he pointed over to the rim of the hills and the earth, away from the light of the moon, under the dim light of strange stars. The wind fluttered his black cloak, and the hood that half shadowed and now half revealed his almost fleshless face. There, do you see it, lads? What? The undiscovered country, out there. Look long, look deep, make a feast. The past, boys, oh, the past. Yes, it's dark, oh, yes, it's dark and full of nightmares. Everything that Halloween ever was lies buried there. Will you dig for bones, boys? Do you have the stuff? He burned his gaze at them. What is Halloween? How did it start? Where? Why? What for? Witches, cats, mummies, dusts, haunts. It's all there in that country from which no one returns. Oh, I thought the boys were saying that part. Let me change the voice for you. He burned... reading aloud is fun. He burned his gaze at them. What is Halloween? How did it start? Where? Why? What for? Witches, cats, mummies, dusts, haunts. It's all there in that country from which no one returns. Will you dive into the dark ocean, boys? Will you fly into the dark sky? The boys swallowed hard. Someone peeped. We'd like to, but Pipkin? We've got to wait for Pipkin. Yeah, Pipkin sent us to your place. We shouldn't go without him. As if summoned in this instant, they heard a cry from the far side of the ravine. Hey, here I am, cried a frail voice. They saw his small figure standing with a lit pumpkin on the far ravine ledge. This way, they all yelled. Come on, Pipkin, quick. Coming, was the cry. I don't feel so good, but I had to come. Wait for me. And now we're at chapter 6, which we're going to wait for next time. But I just wanted to, if I haven't said so before, I'm sure I have, but this book was a really big inspiration to me for a lot of my life, and definitely something I was thinking of when I was putting this podcast together, wanting to explore that dark country of why, where, when, how. And I know it's been a little bit since we've had a new history episode, but they are in the works. A lot has to happen. And it's happening. Things are moving. And as I say, it's always Halloween, so I don't concern myself so much with the way that the calendar falls. And I hope that you don't either, because there's lots of exciting Halloween passion to come, even if the calendar says that the veil is almost completely thin. That's okay. There's more to come.